And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, as you're aware, the chair of the LA Metro Board, Janice Hahn, loves bus driver.
I love the bus driver.
But she also has a bone to pick with the way that crime stories are reported about her beloved Metro. This was uttered at a Metro Board meeting last Thursday.
I wanted to mention that we're seeing improvements in our ridership growth. It's devastating to me every time I still hear an incident with weapons that are occurring on our system.
Because they happen constantly.
Literally a daily basis.
Although I do think it's a little bit unfair when the media takes any kind of crime happening anywhere close to a station, they consider it a crime on Metro. So it's a little bit unfair because there's crime happening all over the city and the county every single day.
You're a supervisor, and that doesn't make you sound any better.
No. In fact, it makes you sound worse.
But if it's anywhere close, a stop, a bridge that has Metro on it, they kind of attribute it to us, which is unfair. Nevertheless... you know how many crimes are committed on Metro platforms, right?
This is their point of view, though. If we would just stop reporting about the crime, people would stop complaining about it.
I am really so committed to figuring out a way to keep weapons off our system.
Wait a second. What weapons? You just said all the crimes on Metro are fake news.
We're trying to sensationalize everything.
And don't forget Fernando Dutra, who said what we really need to do is flood the market with positive stories about Metro.
I think we need to flood the market with some positive news whenever we get it, because I guarantee it goes the other way whenever we get the bad news. So I think it's only fair that we spread the news.
Start spreading the news. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, just when you think you've heard it all, they come up with something new that's even dumber than what we talked about yesterday. And now, in Sacramento and elsewhere, they have discovered something called geographic equity when it comes to placing homeless shelters.
This is now something that's specifically getting talked about in the city and county of San Francisco. District 5 Supervisor Bilal Mahmoud, the guy that replaced Dean Preston, has introduced legislation that would force every single neighborhood in San Francisco, the good ones and the bad ones, to build a homeless shelter because that's equity.
Oh, good Lord. What's coming next? They'll tell us we can't put them under the power lines, too?
You know what? Why don't they take Golden Gate Park and right there in the center where that beautiful waterfall is, homeless shelter?
Yeah, let's destroy the entire city because that's what's equitable.
Right now, San Francisco has a pretty bad homeless problem. It's nothing compared to Los Angeles, but the thing with San Francisco is, as long as you avoid Soma, the Mission, and the Tenderloin, it is a beautiful city. Mahmoud would like to make sure that the entire city looks like the Tenderloin.
You notice, by the way, those areas that you mentioned are always where I pick a hotel room for some reason.
For more on the Homeless Equity Initiative, here is NBC in the Bay Area.
Another new plan to try and solve the homeless crisis in San Francisco. This time the idea is to put new shelters in every district, including wealthy neighborhoods. Now,
How's that going to work out?
Okay, if you put these homeless shelters in wealthy neighborhoods, the only thing you're going to end up with is Paul Pelosi getting hit on the head again.
And by the way, this is something that was tried in Los Angeles and was a total failure in Los Angeles. Former Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti,
I received things on both ends,
with the infusion of Prop H and Triple H money, forced every single district in the city of Los Angeles to put together a bridge home shelter with the promise that they were going to clean up the encampments outside the shelter. That didn't happen. And overnight, the homeless problem in Los Angeles expanded from Skid Row to every single neighborhood in the city.
Well, in addition to being a really bad idea for all of those reasons, it also costs a fortune to put homeless shelters or to buy property in certain areas. If you could establish homeless shelters on the cheap in areas where the problem is acute, you'd be saving money. You could use that money for other things.
You think they should put a shelter up at Ghirardelli Square, right next to the chocolate factory?
Well, if they did, let me tell you, all the tourists would end up going to see Willy Wonka instead.
Maybe we should close down the aquarium and turn that into a homeless shelter. Maybe we should close down Alcatraz. Oh, wait, that's actually a pretty good idea.
Now, a couple of San Francisco supervisors are behind it, but as you can imagine, not everyone's happy with the idea. Here's NBC Bay Area's Christy Smith.
This ordinance is mandating geographic equity of...
Geographic equity.
I'm telling you, I blame the universities because there are so many totally useless departments that these people are getting their degrees in. They sit there and they listen to psychobabble nonstop, and they end up with dumb ideas like this. And then when they get elected to office, they try to enact these dumb ideas into policy.
Equity in a geographic sense means that every neighborhood should be as bad as the bad neighborhood.
That's what they want.
This ordinance is mandating geographic equity of homelessness shelters and services.
Supervisor Bilal Mahmood described the plan and what it aims to address.
Who would have thought that getting rid of Dean Preston would have led to somebody worse?
I'm telling you, it's like overthrowing the government in Iraq. Be careful what you wish for, because you don't know what's coming next.
Supervisor Bilal Mahmood described the plan and what it aims to address in the city. Mahmood represents San Francisco's Tenderloin neighborhood, which houses many of the shelters and other service centers for the unhoused.
Isn't it a case study for if you build it, it will destroy your neighborhood, and he wants to expand that?
And by the way, if he represents the Tenderloin, wouldn't he want as many homeless services that he can get in his district, because that's where the problem is?
Now we got to spread it out throughout the entire city. Presidio, homeless shelter.
Makes no sense.
For too long, certain neighborhoods from Tenderloin, Soma, Mission to the Bayview have borne the brunt of the responsibility. These are communities of color, immigrants, refugees, on homeless shelters and behavioral health centers. And we're basically saying that every district by next year has to have built or approved one shelter or behavioral health center, including my district, by next year.
Now Mahmood.
I love the fact that actually doing something about the problem is not a priority, just spreading the misery.
Now Mahmood and Supervisor Shaman Walton are set to introduce legislation to call for more equity and where those shelters and service centers are located.
Equity.
If you are a supervisor in a different district and you vote for this nonsense, you deserve exactly what's coming, and we all know what's coming.
The District 5 supervisor says everyone has to do their fair share.
And we're also...
You know what? There's that beautiful park next to all the Italian restaurants in North Beach. Homeless shelter.
That's what's going to happen.
The District 5 supervisor says everyone has to do their fair share.
And we're also saying that no two shelter sites can be within 1,000 feet of one another, because certain neighborhoods and corridors have borne that responsibility, and we don't want to replicate what has happened with oversaturation in certain neighborhoods on the east side to be replicated on the west.
Why would you want to turn every neighborhood in the city into the Tenderloin 2.0?
Because somehow he's turned this into a racial issue. Because a lot of immigrants and a lot of people of color, as if that's a term, live in one specific neighborhood where homelessness is a problem, because of that, it needs to go to the white neighborhoods. That's essentially what he's saying.
They also say oversaturation in some areas has affected unhoused people in underserved areas, and that data shows that District 6 has the most emergency shelter beds, while other districts have no emergency shelters at all. We spoke with some people in District 1 for their reaction.
Housing equity is really important.
Oh, God.
Okay, if you live in a district that's not where the homeless people are and you support this, guess what? You're going to eventually have to move out.
Housing equity is really important. If we concentrate that just in one section of the city, it means that we're placing an undue burden on some San Francisco residents when this is a problem that we all need to be approaching together.
The whole idea of having a good neighborhood is going out the window, kids.
And by the way, just take this logic and apply it to other things. Let's say you have an area that has a lot of crime. Well, that's where you put the police officers. So if you are an area that's like the Tenderloin and there's crime that goes on there all the time, which I assume is the case, then you're going to have more sworn uniformed police officers in that particular precinct than you will in areas with no crime. Should we then take all of the police officers out of the Tenderloin and put them in the areas with no crime because that's equity? No, it makes no sense. You have a finite amount of resources, you use them where you need them, and that's the way you get the best results. But if the results aren't something you're interested in, if equity is, then fine, spread it out however you think is equitable. The problem's just going to get worse and it's going to spread.
I understand where he's coming from in terms of making the problem sort of equitable.
They're all using the same psychobabble.
But at the source of it, it isn't equitable. This area, this District 1, doesn't have as large of a homeless population as other districts do. So I don't really see how shifting that population out to this district is really going to fix any issues.
Well, that's equity. That's the definition right there.
Sure. And how about the school district? Maybe they should start doing this too. Let's take neighborhoods with no children and build schools there. And let's take neighborhoods that have a lot of children and take those schools away from them.
Equity.
Any issues?
It's not going to create a better scene. It's just going to spread them out.
We also asked Mayor Lurie for his thoughts on the proposal. His office sent a statement but offered only a general reaction. Via statement, it reads, in part, since taking office, our team has been implementing a data-driven strategy to...
Yeah, he's not supporting this.
No, but he doesn't want to go to war with them right away. But guess what? You're eventually going to go to war with them, so why not start now?
To identify the rights and sites to meet the needs of those in crisis on our streets, adding they will continue working with the board to build on that strategy. In San Francisco, Christy Smith, NBC Bay Area News.
They're going to allow this to happen.
Let's hear what Bilal Mahmoud had to say, because he was interviewed on this very topic on KTVU, Fox 2, over the weekend.
A new plan is in the works in San Francisco, meant to transform two neighborhoods that have long struggled with homelessness and drugs, the Tenderloin and the South of Market. Supervisor Bilal Mahmoud plans to introduce legislation that would require at least one homeless shelter or behavioral health facility in every district of the city. Right now, the Tenderloin and Soma.
The richest neighborhoods get the most mental hospitals.
And you know what's going to happen? When he ruins the good neighborhoods, he's going to say it's success. It's a success. A smashing success.
Right now, the Tenderloin and Soma are home to a disproportionate number of those sites. Supervisor Mahmoud's measure lays out an 18-month time frame.
Right now, if you're in the whole open-air drug market fentanyl scene, you know which neighborhoods to go to. What this legislation would do is tell the fentanyl people, go throughout the entire city. It's all the same.
And word travels fast.
Supervisor Mahmoud's measure lays out an 18-month time frame for city agencies to set up those new facilities.
Okay, so we want to talk more about this effort with Supervisor Mahmoud. Thank you so much, Bilal, for being here. Obviously, you represent the Tenderloin. So tell us what you've been hearing from people in the neighborhood regarding the number of homeless shelters and services in that area.
Yeah, so this legislation was done on behalf of the community. For too long, for decades, certain neighborhoods from the Tenderloin to Soma, Mission, the Bayview have borne the brunt of the responsibility for housing for our fentanyl crisis.
Whoa. They're not the ones paying for those facilities. The city is paying for those facilities, which means the money is coming from all of the districts, and it's being spent where the problem is. Don't act like it's your people that are paying the bill for all of this. Oh, no, that's been spread around for a very long time.
and for homeless services as well.
And don't forget, especially in a place like San Francisco where they offer all of those single-room occupancy units, a lot of the people that are on the street in the homeless drug dens, they already have housing, but they still hang out on the streets every day.
Yeah, because they want to be near the drug trade.
And what they want is equity.
No, they don't. Well, maybe they do. They voted for this guy. We want every neighborhood to be like the Tenderloin.
They all need their heads examined.
We want every district in the city to do their fair share because we are one city. And this legislation...
This is like Gavin Newsom with his housing equity suing Huntington Beach because they haven't built enough slums.
And Norwalk.
And this legislation is really about accomplishing that goal of ensuring that it's setting a floor. Every district just has to approve one site within the next year to make progress and show that we're all contributing our fair share.
Yeah, asking people across the city.
If this actually happens, you know what I would do if I was the supervisor in one of the other districts?
What's that?
If the language says all you have to do is approve it, I would approve it, and I would not allow it to be built. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcast, whether that's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube and check out shows that we've done from a wide range of topics, whether it is politics, insurance, crime. We've got it all covered, including that insurance story on Friday.
Can you generate that for my neighbor to the left and my neighbor to the right and everybody else on the block?
Absolutely.
And in the city?
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the county?
Absolutely.
And in the state?
Absolutely. And then the entire country.
That was an instant classic.
I can't wait till the end of the year when we go through all the drops and I try to remember what the hell that was about.
Well, if you listen to that clip without context, you're going to be thrown through a loop.
Can you generate that for my neighbor to the left and my neighbor to the right and everybody else on the block?
Absolutely.
And in the city?
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the county?
Absolutely.
And in the state?
Absolutely. And then the entire country.
He kind of sounds like Karen Bass saying it.
Well, this was Karen Bass today.
Can I get a picture?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
She had a little bit of a lisp.
Yeah, it almost sounded like phone sex operator Karen.
Can I get a picture?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's right. I like that. That was amazing.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Right now, we're going through the latest zany idea, which is geographic equity with homeless shelters.
Especially in the city of San Francisco, where San Francisco Supervisor of the Tenderloin in District 5, Bilal Mahmoud, says every single district in the city, the good neighborhoods and the bad neighborhoods, all got to build a homeless shelter because that's equity. Let's hear what he had to say. Let's go back to KTVU Fox 2.
Yeah, asking people across the city to shoulder the burden together. But, you know, Supervisor, this is not the first time that someone in San Francisco has tried an approach that I guess is similar to what you're doing. Back in 2019, then Supervisor Matt Henney proposed legislation to force other parts of the city to open navigation centers, but that legislation failed to pass.
And then Matt Henney went on to have fundraisers at Niners games.
Yeah, he's another one who has a lot of bad ideas.
What have you learned from that experience, and how have you adjusted this legislation, and why do you think your plan's going to be any different?
Yeah, I think we're at a very unique point in time where we are working off the shoulders of great supervisors who've come before to set the foundation. Supervisor Jane Kim tried this, then Supervisor Matt Haney, and now Assembly member, and they've endorsed our plan as well. And because of the now...
It's not really a track record of success here.
Yeah, and you only need co-signers when your credit is bad.
Didn't Matt Haney just spend a whole week down in Los Angeles saying that, hey, what we need is for people to get drunk at 4 a.m. That's going to save our downtowns.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what downtown L.A. needs. A bunch of drunks struggling to find their car keys at 4 a.m.
And because of the now makeup of the board, we already have the votes to pass this legislation with co-sponsors of supervisors from the west side and the east side. I'm co-authoring this with Supervisor Shawan Walton, who represents the Bayview, which has also had a heavy concentration of services in their district. So I think it's a very unique point in time where we have a new board of supervisors that was elected in January, and we are working together collaboratively. And so the first time in many decades in our city's history, we have a board of supervisors that's functioning and looking at the city as a whole.
Yeah, they want to destroy the entire city instead of just two neighborhoods.
You would have to be suicidal to sign on to this.
Rather than neighborhood by neighborhood. And I think that's a really critical part of the story.
Let's remember what this is. A supervisor, it's a representative government. Go ask your constituents if they're down with geographic equity.
Well, my guess is, we're talking San Francisco here, many of them are ideological liberals, so they would support something like this in theory. But in practice, it's going to ruin their neighborhood. So even if they tell you they want something like this, in reality, they probably don't.
Okay, so Supervisor, how do you envision this playing out? Do you envision that people who are struggling with mental health addiction and homelessness in the Tenderloin, let's say, will somehow take advantage of a service of a center in the Sunset?
I'm leaving the Tenderloin and I'm going to Nob Hill.
I think the important thing to recognize is that people who go into homeless are becoming homeless everywhere in the city.
No, they're not.
You see, when I grew up in Los Angeles, the homeless were essentially on Skid Row in downtown L.A. Now they're everywhere. The policies that we adopted spread them around.
But I love the ideology here. Anyone in any neighborhood could become homeless in any minute. That's not how this works.
No, but this is the dogma that we have in California, where people are homeless because of the high cost of housing and they shut the plant down. When in reality, we know there's a certain element of people who are homeless who that applies to, but most of them have severe mental illness or drug addiction. And unless and until you do something about those things, you're not going to solve the problem.
I think the important thing to recognize is that people who go into homeless are becoming homeless everywhere in the city. I was out in the street teams with people in the Tenderloin, the new hot teams that are there, and they were telling me about a man in the Richmond who had become homeless. And because there are 0 emergency shelters in the Richmond, they didn't want to go to the Tenderloin because people become homeless in every neighborhood. And I think that's the thing we have to recognize is that unless those people who live there have somewhere to go, they either go onto the street or have to go into other neighborhoods that don't want to. And that's what this legislation is about making sure.
Even the homeless don't want to go to the Tenderloin. Is that what he's saying?
It's dangerous.
And that's what this legislation is about making sure there are available resources in the districts for the people who may be unhoused or become unhoused in those neighborhoods. But also we're making sure to not replicate the mistakes in the past.
This is exactly what Los Angeles has done forever. We can't clean up homeless encampments in Beverly Grove because, sure, all of those people that are homeless in Beverly Grove were just shopping at the Beverly Center 2 weeks ago.
Well, this is what happens when your worldview sees everything through the lens of race. You're seeing it when it's not there. And when you're seeing it when it's not there, then you end up doing things that make no sense. He believes that there is racism involved with the placement of the homeless shelters. And unless and until homeless shelters are in every part of San Francisco, then you'll have, I guess, equity is what he would call it. But in reality, the shelters are where the homeless population is. And if it's in one district or 2 districts or 3 districts, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's not because the KKK set it up. It's because that's where the homeless people are.
And he might want to talk about, someone in the Richmond became homeless. But you know what? You do a census of the homeless people that are in his district, the Tenderloin. Most of them not from San Francisco to begin with. They came there for the open-air drug market.
Yes, your policies attracted them to come from Ohio and West Virginia and other places. Look in the mirror.
But also, we're making sure to not replicate the mistakes in the past. One of the critical components of this legislation is a 1,000 feet rule, which that no 2 shelter or behavioral health sites can be within 1,000 feet of each other.
And most people in that shelter can't be within 1,000 feet of a school.
Yeah. When are you going to put a homeless shelter across the street from another homeless shelter? They're not Starbucks.
Because we have seen what's happened in the Tenderloin and Soma, where you concentrate services so much in one neighborhood, it affects the small businesses, it affects the families and the children who live there.
Wasn't there just a big bust where a bunch of the shops in the Tenderloin were just fronts for illegal gambling and prostitution?
Oh, yeah.
So we don't want to make those same mistakes, and that's why that very important rule is here as well, so that other districts don't see the same results as we've seen in the past.
Finally, Supervisor, what are you doing and how are you preparing for what you have to expect is going to be some significant pushback from people, from business owners in some of these other neighborhoods that say, look, I don't want a homeless shelter near me? What is going to be the argument?
I pay dearly to be in the nice part of San Francisco. I do not want a homeless shelter near me. That does not make me a racist.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they respond, because you're dealing with almost all Democrats and almost all liberals. And what they're going to do is call all those people racist.
What is going to be the argument that you approach them with to convince them that this is the right strategy and what's best for the city of San Francisco as a whole?
I mean, two things. One, we work collaboratively with supervisors on the west side. We already have Supervisor Melgar, who represents District 7, which also has 0 emergency shelters, and she's working collaboratively on this legislation. Two, the 1,000 feet rule that we just talked about, sharing with people that they're not going to see a concentration of services in their neighborhood. And actually, it's going to help the people that they might see on the streets in their neighborhood come inside. And then,
no, it's not. They already have housing.
He really is living in some kind of fantasy world.
And then 3, showing that the models for how we are doing homeless services these days is very different than the past. We just had a site, 822 Geary, open up in my district. And in that component, we have guaranteed safety, police presence, ambassadors that are there.
Do we need a history lesson?
They love the ambassadors.
London Breed, former mayor of San Francisco. Tell us about those ambassadors in the Tenderloin.
People have been stabbed in Urban Alchemy. They've been shot. They've been attacked. And they still show up every single day as an alternative to policing for this community.
I wonder why she lost.
Sounds like a successful program to me.
Make that money!
Yeah, you remember the overview of Urban Alchemy? We pay the former convict Urban Alchemy ambassadors $8 every single time they approach a homeless person and say, would you like a cigarette?
They're Marlboro men of sorts.
And that's kept it going and safe and very well functioning. And I think that's the model for what we want to see in different districts as well. So we're ensuring guaranteed safety, ensuring ambassadors, but also ensuring that we're not concentrating in any one place. And that's what we hope to do, again, learning from the mistakes of the past of what's happened in my district and making sure it's not replicated across the rest of the city.
That's literally what you're trying to do.
I'll tell you, that is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful city. And if you're wondering why it doesn't function, this is why.
They took a step in the right direction with Daniel Lurie, but the Board of Supervisors got even crazier.
Okay, Supervisor Mahmoud, appreciate your time tonight. We know that you're going to be introducing this to the Board of Supervisors next week.
Oh, boy.
All right. Well, there you have it. Randy, I think we have time for one more addition to the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And this edition takes us to Hollywood,
where squatters are taking over homes and starting fires.
You don't say.
For more, here is Fox 11 in L.A.
Neighborhood residents say they're living in fear, worried about the danger caused by several recent house fires.
Fox 11's Matthew Seedorf starts us off, spoke to some of those neighbors. He's live with our report. Matthew.
Yeah, those neighbors tell me that they're fed up. They want this to stop. Take a look at these two homes. You can see they're fenced off and boarded up, but that's not stopping people from breaking in.
You don't say.
After the city just burned down, we're now allowing this to happen.
Squatters, day and night, taking over 2 vacant, boarded-up homes in this Hollywood neighborhood.
They cut the fence, then they lift it.
Ignoring signs that say...
Is trespassing not a crime?
Any crime associated with poverty is something that the cops are told to look the other way on.
Ignoring signs that say closed to the public.
A lot of trespassing, a lot of trespassers have drugs and weapons.
That's all fine.
They go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Neighbors on Wilton constantly recording what they see and sometimes can't unsee.
I saw a person, transgender person or what, and he was just sitting there, opened his legs, and he was shaving his legs or doing something.
Oh, my.
That is quite an eyeful.
And, people have kids here, and we don't want to, see that nasty stuff.
Well, you're making the wall, lady.
And, people have kids here, and we don't want to, see that nasty stuff.
Vox Populi.
No shaving your legs in the middle of the street.
But their biggest concern, recent fires. TNL.
I don't know. It feels like her biggest concern was the razor.
Yeah, well, it sounded like the fruit was out of the loom, too.
TNLA sharing this video with us from last week's massive blaze, the second one this month, with neighbors estimating 20 squatters inside the homes.
They've cut out the
Remember, there was a squatter story a few months ago where someone took over an abandoned building and then was renting out the rooms to OnlyFans models?
And they can't find honest work.
They've cut out the power here, the street lights, to provide themselves with electricity.
How is tampering with the DWP boxes not a crime?
Nobody cares. That's what's wild about this. No one seems to be bothered.
We've reported on several large destructive fires this year at vacant buildings across L.A. In this memo sent to the Board of Fire Commissioners last week, the interim fire chief says roughly 1/3 of all LAFD calls for fires involve the homeless.
You don't say.
Now, the chief who got fired said that it was not a third, it was half.
Well, this guy's got to stay on Karen Bass's good side.
We are constantly coming out, hearing ambulance, the fire engines and police sirens and all this. And it's just ridiculous.
Workers Thursday taking away burned furniture from the damaged home, also trying to lock up the property.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
At this point, you just need to hire a snake handler.
Well, isn't there a guy that advertises his services where if you have a squatter, he's good at getting them out?
Oh, yeah.
A spokesperson from LA City Council District 13, Hugo Soto Martinez's office, tells Fox 11, we're working urgently with the Department of Building and Safety to declare this as a nuisance property.
Doesn't sound like you're working that urgently, Hugo.
Okay, but you notice he's going after the owner and not the squatters.
He doesn't want to go after the squatters. That's his constituency.
So it's like what happened in Oakland when the buildings got tagged. Instead of going after the taggers, they went after the building owners for not removing the graffiti soon enough.
So the city can step in and keep it secure. So if the homes are declared a nuisance, the city can come and demolish them. Then they'd bill the owner of those properties for all the work the city has to do.
I guarantee this is yet another building that's owned by some Chinese developer that they just abandoned. That's what we see all over the city.
It's got to be people parking money.
Reporting live tonight, Matthew Seedorf, Fox 11 News.
So, obviously, all these fires are being sparked by homeless people. We see it almost every day. We see a lot of them along the freeways as well. So what are they going to do about it? Are there any changes in policies?
Nope.
Yeah, that's what we're waiting on. I mean, it seems like it's obvious, right? It's obvious that residents out here are upset. They are calling it a nuisance. But right now, I think there's just some back and forth paperwork between the owners here and the city and trying to get this all figured out.
This is the problem happening in neighborhood after neighborhood with these vacant buildings there. All right, Matthew, thank you so much.
Our local electeds do not take fire safety seriously. If they would eliminate the number one cause of all these fires.
You see, here's the problem. And you could say, okay, this is a bad neighborhood, a bad part of Hollywood. Nobody cares, so just let them live in the misery. Fine, I understand that. But when you're starting fires spread. So if they're starting fires and no one does anything about it, that fire could spread to a different neighborhood where they would have done something about this. So you can't allow this to go on.
And think about the people that were living in that building. If the fire starts to spread, that one person isn't going to need to shave their legs because all the hair got singed off.
Oh, yeah.
And, people have kids here, and we don't want to, see that nasty stuff.
It's not just their eyebrows they're going to lose.